crowd outside the grand premiere was louder than anyone expected that night. But the moment that would change everything began with a silence so sharp that even the camera shutters paused for a heartbeat. People had gathered to see bright lights, expensive clothes, famous faces, and the usual glamorous noise that follows every major event. Yet none of them imagined that a quiet moment of human struggle happening near the edge of the red carpet would soon become the center of every conversation. The story did not start when Keanu Reeves stepped out of his car or when reporters leaned forward for better angles. It started with a tired mother standing on the far side of the barricade, holding a small child who clung to her with heavy eyes and quiet fear. She was not there for pictures, attention, or autographs. She was there because she had nowhere else to go. The city had been cold for many nights, and she had carried her daughter from shelter to shelter with little success. She had passed by the theater only because the bright lights felt warm for a moment, even though she knew she did not belong anywhere near such a luxurious event. She kept whispering to her daughter that everything would be fine, that they would find a safe place after the crowd left. Yet her voice trembled with the exhaustion of many sleepless nights. No one noticed her at first because she blended into the shadows, wearing layers of worn clothing that told the story of long struggles. She tried to stay out of the way, but fate had a different plan. The moment Keanu's car approached, the energy on the carpet shifted. People pushed forward, security tightened their lines, and flashes exploded like tiny stars. Fans cheered and screamed his name because they admired the calm presence he always carried. He stepped out of the black car with his usual gentle smile, waving politely, never rushing, never acting bigger than anyone else. For a moment, everything looked like a perfect premiere night. But somewhere behind the noise, the tired mother moved too close while trying to adjust her daughter's blanket. She did not realize she had stepped into a restricted walkway, and a guard noticed her before she could correct her position. The guard was tense from dealing with excited fans all evening, and he reacted without thinking. He reached forward and shoved her back with more force than necessary, sending her stumbling with her child almost slipping from her arms. The push was quick, sharp, and careless, and most people did not even see it. But one pair of eyes caught every detail with painful clarity. Keanu Reeves had been turning toward a group of fans when he noticed the guard's action, and something inside him froze. The polite smile disappeared from his face. He did not see a random woman. He saw a mother desperately holding on to her child, trying not to fall, trying not to cry, trying not to be seen as a problem. His steps changed direction without hesitation, surprising the crowd. Cameras followed him because they sensed something unusual. Reporters lowered their microphones, unsure of what was about to happen. Keanu walked away from the red carpet lights, left the photos behind, and moved straight toward the trembling woman. The guard stepped back, confused, but Keanu did not look angry. He looked deeply disappointed in what he had just witnessed, and his calm disappointment felt heavier than any loud outburst. As Keanu reached the woman, the small child hid her face against her mother's shoulder, frightened by the loud voices around them. The mother tried to apologize even though she had done nothing wrong. Her voice cracked as she explained she was only trying to adjust the blanket, only trying to keep her daughter warm. Keanu listened quietly, his presence suddenly creating a stillness around them. He spoke gently, telling her she did not need to apologize, telling her she had every right to stand where she stood, telling her that no one deserved to be pushed like that. People nearby began to whisper, realizing something important was happening. Cameras lifted, flashes restarted, and the moment grew larger than the premiere itself. Still, Keanu did not care about attention. He focused only on the woman and her child. He asked if they were safe, if they needed help, if they had eaten. The mother's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide, but exhaustion made it impossible. She admitted they had not eaten properly in 2 days. When she said those words, Keanu felt a deep ache inside, because he could see her strength fading, without waiting for anyone to intervene. He took off his coat and gently placed it over the child. He told the mother that warmth mattered more than anything else. The crowd watched with a mixture of awe and confusion, because they were not used to seeing a premiere pause for something so raw and real. Yet Keanu did not look back at the cameras. He asked the mother if she would allow him to help her find a safe place for the night. She hesitated because she felt ashamed. But he reassured her in soft, steady tones that dignity mattered, and asking for help did not take it away at that moment. The guard who had pushed her tried to explain himself, but Keanu raised his hand slightly, signaling him to stop. He spoke with no anger, only calm firmness, telling the guard to treat every person with respect, no matter their situation. The guard lowered his eyes, realizing how badly he had misjudged the moment. The premiere continued somewhere behind them, but the true story was unfolding here, where humanity was being tested, before Keanu could walk the mother toward a quieter space. The small child reached out her hand toward him. Her gesture was hesitant, yet trusting, and it touched everyone who saw it. Keanu smiled warmly and took her hand with gentle care. The mother watched, overwhelmed by the kindness she had not expected from anyone, especially someone so famous. The child whispered something too soft for most people to hear, but Keanu listened closely. She asked if he could help her mother not be sad anymore. The simplicity of her question shook Keanu more than any movie script ever had. He promised he would do everything he could to help them both. The mother tried to speak, but her voice broke completely. She had carried so much weight for so long that the sudden kindness felt almost unreal. Keanu guided them through a side passage, away from the brightness and noise. Security members followed at a respectful distance, trying not to interfere. But the moment they turned the corner, something unexpected happened. Everyone expected Keanu Reeves to return to the red carpet quickly, because premieres usually followed strict schedules. But when he disappeared behind the side passage with the mother and her small child, the crowd grew uncertain. People whispered to each other, wondering what could be happening, while reporters tried to guess if this moment would become news or fade quietly. Yet none of them knew how deeply the situation would affect Keanu, or how it would lead him to uncover something far heavier than a simple misunderstanding at the premiere. The night that was supposed to belong to flashing lights and polished interviews was shifting into something far more human and unpredictable. As Keanu walked beside the mother, he noticed the slow, unsteady way she carried her daughter. Exhaustion had pushed her body to its limits, and she moved as if every step required effort she barely had left. The hallway was quieter than the carpet, but faint echoes from the crowd still reached them. The child held Keanu's hand with a shy but trusting grip, her small fingers trembling slightly from the cold and fear. Keanu felt a weight in his chest because he could see how deeply they had suffered, and his mind kept replaying the moment the guard shoved her. He could not understand how anyone could treat another person with such carelessness. When they reached a quieter corner near a staff entrance, Keanu gently guided them to a bench against the wall. The mother sat down, carefully adjusting the coat he had placed around her daughter. She kept apologizing softly, saying she did not want to ruin his night or cause trouble. But Keanu reassured her again that she had not done anything wrong. He crouched beside her, trying to keep his voice steady and gentle. He asked her name, and she hesitated before answering. Her name was Alina, and her daughter's name was Maya. The names felt fragile on her tongue, as if she had not spoken them with confidence in a long time. Keanu asked Alina how long she had been struggling, but her answer revealed more pain than he expected. She told him they had lost their home several months ago after a series of unexpected hardships. She had tried to find work, but each attempt led to disappointment. Shelters had waiting lists, and some places did not allow children. She had been moving from sidewalk to shelter, from hope to fear, never knowing if the next day would be worse or better. Her voice shook as she explained that she had always believed she could endure anything as long as Maya stayed safe. But lately she had felt the walls closing in as she spoke. Keanu remained completely focused, listening with full attention. He did not interrupt. He did not rush her. His silence was warm and respectful. He noticed scars on her hands that looked like they came from heavy lifting or rough labor. He saw how her shoulders curved inward from carrying more than just weight. He felt a deep sadness because he knew how many people in the world suffered quietly, unseen, unheard, and often ignored. Keanu believed kindness could change lives, but he also understood that some wounds needed more than gentle words. Keanu told Alina that he wanted to help her, but Alina looked away with a tense expression. She felt ashamed, not because she had asked for help, but because she had grown used to being treated as invisible. Accepting kindness felt frightening, as if it might disappear suddenly. She whispered that people usually told her to move, to be quiet, to get out of sight. Her voice broke again when she admitted that the push from the guard was not the first time someone had treated her like she was less important. Keanu felt anger rise inside him, not toward her, but toward a world that failed so many people like her. Before Keanu could say anything more, Maya tugged gently on his sleeve. She looked up at him with wide, tired eyes and asked a simple question that sent a shock through him. She asked if they could stay somewhere warm tonight. That question was small, yet it carried the weight of every night they had spent searching for safety. Keanu felt his heart tighten. He promised her, in a steady voice, that he would not let them stay in the cold again. Alina tried to protest, saying she did not want to be a burden, but Keanu softly insisted. He told her that dignity mattered, and accepting help did not erase it. Before they could continue the conversation, a member of the premier's event team approached hesitantly. He looked nervous because he was not sure whether to interrupt Keanu or stay silent. He explained that the director and producers were waiting. The press was asking questions and cameras were pointing toward the side entrance. Keanu nodded politely, but did not rise from his place beside Alina. The team member tried again, repeating that the schedule was tight and Keanu needed to be on the carpet. Yet, Keanu's voice held a firm calmness as he told him that this moment was more important. The man understood and stepped back respectfully. Alina watched all of this with disbelief. She whispered that she did not want to ruin his career or cause conflict. Keanu smiled gently and told her that compassion was never a distraction and doing what was right was never a burden. He told her that no premiere or interview mattered more than ensuring she and Maya were safe. Tears formed in her eyes again, but she quickly wiped them, trying to hide them from her daughter. Just then, Maya's breathing grew uneven. She seemed dizzy, and her face looked pale under the hallway lights. Keanu leaned closer, trying to understand what was happening. Elena's expression shifted from exhaustion to panic. She whispered that Maya had been sick for days, but she did not have access to proper care. Keanu felt fear rise inside him because he could see the weakness in the child's posture. He asked Alina how long the symptoms had been getting worse, and she admitted they had been progressing for several nights. She had hoped it was just fatigue, but now she was afraid it was something more serious. Keanu immediately reached for his phone, telling Alina they needed medical help, but Alina grabbed his wrist gently. She shook her head and begged him not to call an ambulance because she could not afford the cost. She said she had faced debt before and could not survive another bill. The desperation in her eyes made Keanu pause, not because he agreed, but because he understood her fear. He spoke quietly, telling her that he would take care of any expenses, that she did not need to worry about money. Alina hesitated, torn between fear and hope, before she could respond. Maya's body leaned heavily against her mother's arm, as if her strength was fading. Keanu gently placed a hand on the child's forehead and felt how warm she was. She needed help quickly. He told Alina again that they could not wait. This time, Alina nodded weakly, realizing she had no choice. Keanu stood and signaled one of the event medics nearby. The medic rushed over and checked Maya quickly, confirming that she needed immediate medical attention. The medic called for a private medical transport from the back of the venue. Keanu stayed close, reassuring both mother and daughter. While they waited, Alina looked at him and whispered that she did not understand why he cared so much. Keanu answered simply that everyone deserved dignity, safety, and kindness, and that no one should face hardship alone. Alina cried quietly, hiding her face in her hands. When the private medical vehicle arrived, Keanu helped Alina and Maya inside. The medic sat beside them, preparing to monitor Maya during the ride. Keanu climbed in as well, ignoring the startled expressions of the staff outside. He did not intend to leave them alone, not now, and not until he knew they were safe. As the doors closed, the noise of the premiere faded into silence. But just before the vehicle drove away, Keanu noticed something unusual outside the window. A man in a dark jacket was watching them with an expression that was too focused to be casual, and the moment their eyes met, the man stepped back into the shadows, disappearing before Keanu could react. The night felt heavier than usual when the private medical vehicle pulled away from the premiere, carrying Keanu, Alina, and Maya into the quiet streets away from the blinding lights. Yet even as the city moved past them, something inside Keanu refused to settle. The image of the man disappearing into the shadows stayed in his mind with a sharpness he could not ignore. He did not mention it to Alina because she was focused entirely on Maya, whose breathing was shallow and uneven. The mimetic kept checking her pulse while giving her small sips of water, and each moment felt like a fragile countdown that tightened the air inside the vehicle. Keanu sat opposite Alina, watching her hold her daughter with trembling hands. He noticed how Alina tried to stay strong, whispering soft comfort into Maya's ear, even though her voice shook with fear. Every now and then, Alina looked at the medic as if searching for signs of hope. The medic remained calm, explaining quietly that Maya needed further tests to understand what was happening. Keanu kept his gaze steady, offering silent reassurance. He wanted Alina to know that she was not alone, that he would not leave her side, no matter how complicated things became. The vehicle stopped at a private clinic a few minutes later. Staff members were already waiting outside, guided by a call Keanu had made earlier from the hallway. They rushed forward with gentle urgency, helping Alina carry Maya inside. The hallways smelled faintly of disinfectant, but the lights were soft and warm, creating a comforting contrast to the cold tension that filled their hearts. Nurses guided them into a room where Maya was carefully placed on a small bed. Alina stayed beside her, brushing strands of hair away from her daughter's forehead. When the doctor entered the room, he greeted them calmly and began examining Maya with careful hands. Keanu stood near the door, not wanting to crowd the space but refusing to step too far away. He watched closely as the doctor checked Maya's temperature, breathing, and reflexes. Each movement the doctor made seemed to add new layers of worry to Alina's expression. After several minutes, the doctor finally stepped back and explained that Maya needed immediate fluids and further tests to understand the cause of her weakness. Alina grew pale, clutching her daughter's hand. Keanu asked if the clinic had everything needed for the tests, and the doctor nodded. He reassured them that they were in a safe place, but he also added that Maya's body had been under extreme stress, likely from lack of food, exhaustion, and exposure to harsh weather. Alina covered her face with her hands, guilt and helplessness colliding inside her. She whispered that she had tried so hard to keep Maya safe, that she had done everything she could. Keanu gently touched her shoulder, reminding her that none of this was her fault. Life had pushed her into impossible circumstances, and she had fought as hard as she could as the nurses connected the fluid line to Maya's arm. Alina watched her daughter with a look that held years of exhaustion. She asked the doctor if Maya would be okay, and the doctor answered honestly but gently. He said they needed to run tests before giving a full answer, but the fluids would help immediately. Alina nodded, but her eyes filled with tears again. Keanu stayed beside her, wanting to anchor her with his presence. He knew words could only do so much, but sometimes having someone standing with you made the fear easier to carry. After the nurses finished, the doctor stepped out, promising to return once they had initial results. The room fell quiet except for the soft rhythm of the heart monitor. Alina leaned over Maya, pressing her forehead gently against her daughter's hand. Keanu watched them silently, feeling the weight of the moment settle deeply inside him. Maya looked small and fragile against the white sheets, and Keanu felt a fierce determination rise within him. He did not know how far he would need to go, but he was ready to do whatever was necessary. Minutes passed slowly, stretching into a silence that filled every corner of the room. Alina finally looked up at Keanu with a fragile expression. She asked him why he had helped them, why he had left the premiere, why he cared so much when he had no obligation to do anything at all. Keanu answered with quiet sincerity. He told her that compassion was not something he chose only when convenient. He told her that he believed every person deserved respect and humanity, no matter their situation. He told her that if anyone had seen Maya the way he saw her, a child fighting to stay strong, they would not have hesitated to help. Alina wanted to believe him, but her eyes carried the pain of countless disappointments. She whispered that most people looked away when they saw her and Maya. She said people often pretended not to notice them, as if the mother and child's suffering was an inconvenience. Keanu listened closely, feeling a slow anger build in his chest, not at her but at the world that had failed her. He told her she was stronger than she realized, because she had kept moving in a world that kept pushing her down. Before Alina could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. The doctor entered with a folder in his hands, and Elena's breath caught. She could not hide the fear on her face. The doctor explained that they had run the first round of tests, and some results were concerning. He carefully explained that Maya's body showed signs of severe fatigue and dehydration. But there was also something else that needed further investigation. A specific marker in her blood work suggested that her immune system had been under long-term stress. As the doctor spoke, Elena's hands tightened around the edge of the bed. She asked if that meant her daughter had some serious illness. The doctor paused, choosing his words carefully. He said that they needed more tests to be certain, but they could not ignore the possibility. Elena's eyes widened with fear. Keanu stepped closer, gently steadying her arm. He asked the doctor what the next steps were. The doctor explained that they needed to admit Maya for further observation and testing. Elena's breathing grew shaky. She whispered that she did not want Maya to stay alone. The doctor reassured her that she could stay with her daughter the entire time. Keanu promised he would not leave until everything was clear. Elena looked at him with gratitude and disbelief woven together. She could not understand why someone who barely knew her was willing to stand beside her through this. As the nurses prepared Maya for transfer to a hospital room, Keanu stepped aside to make a phone call. He wanted to arrange support for Elena beyond tonight. He planned to contact a trusted friend who often helped with charitable projects. But just as he unlocked his phone, he sensed movement outside the clinic hallway. When he turned, he saw a familiar figure near the far corner. It was the same man from the premiere. He was leaning against the wall casually, as if he had been waiting. But when Keanu's gaze met his, the man straightened his posture and began walking toward him. There was something unsettling in the way he moved, like he knew exactly what he wanted. Keanu felt a surge of alertness. He stepped slightly forward, ready to block any approach toward Elena and Maya. The man stopped a few steps away and spoke in a low voice, but what he said made Keanu's entire body tense. "You shouldn't have interfered tonight."
The hallway outside Maya's room felt unnaturally still when the man's quiet threat settled into the air. Every sound in the clinic seemed to fade at once, leaving only the heaviness of his words echoing between the walls. Keanu stood completely still, his expression calm but alert. He had faced uncomfortable situations before, yet something about this man's presence felt different, sharper, like a shadow carrying a purpose far beyond simple intimidation. The man kept his hands in his jacket pockets, but his gaze held a cold confidence that made the moment feel even more unsettling. Elena did not see what was happening because she was inside the room with her daughter, softly humming to Maya while the nurses prepared equipment. The clinic staff nearby noticed the tension but did not understand the context, so they kept a cautious distance. Keanu shifted slightly, positioning himself between the man and the door that led to Elena and Maya. He did not raise his voice or posture aggressively. Instead, he spoke with quiet steadiness, asking the man who he was and why he was following them. The man gave a slight smirk as if he was amused by the question. He stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away, and his voice lowered to a tone that suggested he enjoyed holding hidden knowledge. He told Keanu that people in trouble attracted attention, and sometimes that attention came from the wrong places. He said Elena had been involved in something far more complex than homelessness and misfortune. He hinted that she had something that did not belong to her, something that others wanted back. His words were vague, but the threat behind them was unmistakable. For a moment, Keanu felt uncertainty settle into his thoughts. He wondered what the man meant, but he did not allow confusion to weaken his focus. He replied calmly, saying that Elena and her daughter deserved safety and dignity, and that no one had the right to intimidate them. The man laughed softly, shaking his head as if Keanu were naive. He told him that kindness was admirable but dangerous when offered without understanding the whole situation. He added that trouble always found people like Elena, and anyone who stood too close would get pulled into it. Keanu narrowed his eyes slightly. He asked the man directly what he wanted. The man stepped closer again, lowering his voice even further. He said he wanted Elena to stop running and return what she took, because certain people were growing impatient. He said tonight's scene at the premiere had drawn too much attention, and someone like Keanu getting involved made things complications none of them needed. He warned Keanu to walk away before things became worse. Inside the room, Maya stirred slightly, and Alina whispered comforting words. Keanu heard the soft sound and felt an unwavering sense of responsibility anchor inside him. He took a slow step forward, closing the space between himself and the man until they were standing only a short distance apart. In a calm but firm voice, he told the man that he would not allow anyone to threaten or harm Alina or Maya. He said he would ensure their safety, no matter who or what was involved. The man tilted his head slightly, examining Keanu with a mixture of curiosity and irritation. He said that Keanu had no idea what he was getting involved in. He repeated that Alina's situation was not simple, that she had made choices with consequences. But then he added something unsettling. He said Alina was not the only one being watched that night. He said Maya had been seen too, and that was what made the situation urgent. Keanu felt a sharp jolt inside him. He asked the man what he meant, but the man only smirked again. He said answers would come soon, but he doubted Keanu would like them. Then, without warning, the man stepped back into the hallway and turned toward the exit. Before leaving, he looked over his shoulder and said one final sentence with a tone that felt far too casual for the weight of his words. Some people don't forgive mistakes, and she has made many. Keanu watched as the man slipped through the exit doors and disappeared into the darkness outside. For several seconds, the hallway felt frozen. The air carried a tension that clung to Keanu's mind as he tried to understand the meaning of the man's words. He did not know if Alina had truly done something dangerous, or if the man was lying to intimidate him. But he knew one thing with absolute clarity: Alina and Maya needed protection, and he would stand between them and any threat that tried to reach them. He stepped back inside the room, forcing his expression to soften so he would not alarm Alina. She looked up immediately, sensing something had changed. She noticed a subtle shift in his posture, a quiet heaviness he tried to hide. She asked him softly if everything was all right. Keanu hesitated for a moment before answering. He did not want to scare her, not while Maya was so fragile, not while everything was still uncertain. So he told her there was nothing she needed to worry about right now. He sat beside her and asked how Maya was doing. Alina said the fluids seemed to be helping slightly, though Maya was still weak. She brushed her daughter's hair gently, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. After a moment of silence, Alina asked Keanu something that took him by surprise. She asked if he regretted helping them, if he felt that leaving the premiere had been a mistake. She asked with a trembling voice, as if she feared the answer. Keanu shook his head firmly, telling her he did not regret anything. He told her that helping people in need was never a mistake. Alina looked down, twisting the edge of her sleeve between her fingers. She said quietly that people often turned away when things became complicated. She said they either walked away or blamed her for everything that went wrong. She said she was used to being alone, used to carrying her burden without anyone staying long enough to understand it. Keanu listened carefully, feeling a deeper ache form in his chest. He wanted to reassure her completely, but before he could speak, Alina lifted her gaze and whispered something that made his heart tighten. She said she had not told him everything. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his expression calm but attentive. He told her she did not have to explain anything until she was ready, but Alina shook her head, wiping a tear from her cheek. She said she had to tell him something because it was connected to why she had been running. She looked at Maya, then at Keanu, and her voice trembled as she began to speak. She explained that months ago, she had been working at a storage facility, cleaning and organizing boxes. During one shift, she discovered something hidden inside a crate, papers and documents she did not understand at first. At first, she thought they were mistakes or misplaced items. But when she tried to report them, her supervisor reacted with fear instead of confusion. Soon after, strangers began watching her, following her, and asking questions she could not answer. She realized she had stumbled into something dangerous, something involving people who did not want certain things to be discovered. She tried to leave the job quietly, but someone broke into the small room she was renting at the time. She realized she had to run. She took only the essentials, grabbed Maya, and left before dawn. Keanu felt the weight of her words settle into his thoughts, connecting slowly with what the mysterious man had said earlier. Alina continued speaking with growing fear. She said she did not take anything intentionally. She had accidentally kept a single page from the documents, a page that had been stuck to her sleeve that day. She did not realize she had it until long after she fled. When she tried to return it anonymously, she found out the office had been cleared and abandoned. She whispered that the page might be the reason the men were still after her. She pulled a small folded piece of paper from her worn bag, holding it as if it were fragile glass. Keanu looked at it quietly, trying to understand. Alina said she had kept it hidden for months, not knowing what to do. She said she feared that if someone took it, they might harm her or Maya, so she did nothing except run. Before Keanu could respond, Maya stirred again, opening her eyes weakly. Alina leaned over her, whispering softly. Keanu watched the moment with tenderness, but he also felt the tension rising around them. He knew the quiet would not last. He knew someone else might already be looking for them, and he was right. Because in the security room of the clinic, a camera feed showed a figure entering through the back entrance. It was the same man. And this time, he was not alone. The quiet hum of the clinic's machines felt strangely fragile when danger silently crept closer. While Alina sat beside Maya, gently stroking her daughter's hair with the soft, trembling touch of a mother who feared the future, Keanu stood near the door listening for anything unusual. He tried to stay calm for their sake, but a cold uneasiness pulled at him from the inside. He knew the man from earlier was not finished. He knew threats like that rarely came alone or without intention. And he knew the darkness outside the clinic could easily slip inside if no one stopped it. Keanu stepped into the hallway for a moment, pretending to stretch his back, but his senses were sharpened. He looked toward the far end of the corridor and noticed one of the security cameras was no longer glowing, as if someone had tampered with the power. The hair on the back of his neck lifted slightly. He scanned the hallway more carefully and saw a shadow flicker near the emergency stairwell door. It was just a small movement, but it felt deliberate. He took a quiet breath, steadying himself. He did not want to alarm Alina until he understood the situation fully. Inside the room, Alina whispered a lullaby she used to sing to Maya when she was younger, hoping it would comfort her. Maya's eyes were half closed, heavy with exhaustion, but she tried to smile when Alina squeezed her hand. The moment was tender and fragile, a small island of love in a night full of fear. Alina did not know what was happening in the hallway, but something in her heart sensed danger. She looked toward the door and saw Keanu's shadow shift slightly. She could not hear anything, but she felt it, the quiet before something changes forever. Keanu stepped back into the room with a gentle expression that hid the tension inside him. He told Alina he needed to check something with the clinic staff and would return in a moment. She nodded, trusting him fully because his presence had become a pillar she leaned on without question. Her eyes carried worry, but Keanu reassured her with a small, warm smile. Then he stepped out of the room and closed the door quietly behind him. The hallway felt much colder this time. The silence stretched thin, and Keanu walked toward the security office, keeping his footsteps steady and quiet. When he reached the corner, he noticed the door to the back entrance was slightly open, something that should never happen in a clinic late at night. Keanu moved carefully, staying near the wall. He approached the security office and peered inside through the small window in the door. What he saw made his stomach tighten. The security guard who was supposed to be watching the cameras was slumped in his chair, unconscious but breathing. The screens showed static on several feeds, and 2 cameras were completely offline. Someone had already been there. Keanu pushed open the door quietly and checked the guard's pulse with gentle urgency. The guard would be fine, but he had clearly been knocked out. Keanu took his phone and tried to call for help, but the signal was weak, almost non-existent. Someone had jammed the connection. Keanu's mind sharpened instantly. He moved quickly back into the hallway, his steps silent but firm. He passed by a window that overlooked the side alley outside the clinic, and his breath caught. 2 men stood there, waiting near the back door, both wearing dark jackets similar to the man he had encountered earlier. They watched the entrance with quiet focus, as if expecting someone to come through soon. One of them held something under his coat, a shape that made Keanu's pulse quicken. He did not know what it was, but he knew it wasn't harmless. Keanu stepped back quickly, making sure they did not see him. His mind raced. He needed to protect Alina and Maya. There was no time to rely on the clinic staff alone. He moved quietly toward their room, trying to decide whether to move them or barricade the space. But when he reached the door, something made him stop again. The quietness inside felt different. He opened the door slowly and stepped inside. Alina looked up immediately, sensing something wrong. She whispered his name, asking if everything was okay. Keanu walked to her calmly, but with a seriousness she had not seen before. He knelt beside her and gently explained that they needed to be prepared because someone had entered the clinic. Alina's eyes widened in fear, and she instinctively pulled Maya closer. Her breath trembled, and she asked him what they should do. Keanu looked toward the hallway and then back at Alina. He told her that they needed to leave the room quietly and head toward a safer exit before the men reached them. Alina clutched Maya's blanket tightly, her fear rising. She whispered that Maya could not walk far in her condition. Keanu gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and told her he would carry Maya if needed. He spoke softly but firmly, reminding her that they had to move now. Just as Alina nodded, preparing herself to stand, the lights in the hallway flickered. A moment later, the entire clinic went dim. Emergency lights turned on with a soft red glow, casting long shadows across the walls. Alina's breath hitched. Maya stirred weakly, confused by the sudden change. Keanu's jaw tightened. He knew the men were cutting off visibility to make their approach easier. He carefully lifted Maya into his arms. She felt light, far too light for her age. She rested her head against his shoulder, whispering his name softly. Keanu whispered back, telling her everything would be okay, even though the tension in his chest tightened with every second that passed. Alina followed behind him, her hand gripping the back of his shirt as if letting go would mean losing everything. They stepped into the hallway, moving silently under the emergency lights. Keanu listened for footsteps, voices, anything that would reveal where the men were. The building hummed faintly with the low buzz of emergency power. They reached the intersection of two hallways, and Keanu paused, looking in both directions. The right hallway led toward the back exit where the men were waiting. The left hallway led toward the main reception area and another exit. Keanu gestured for Alina to follow him left. They moved quickly but quietly. Alina kept glancing behind them, expecting someone to appear at any moment. Her pulse raced in her ears, matching the rhythm of her footsteps. She looked at Maya and whispered for her to stay awake. Maya blinked slowly, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. Keanu held her securely, adjusting her weight so she would not slip. As they approached the corner near the reception area, Keanu stopped again. He heard footsteps coming from the far end of the hallway. They were slow, steady, and heavy. Someone was approaching. Alina felt her heart drop into her stomach. Keanu gently handed Maya back to her mother, telling her to hold her tightly and stay close to the wall. He stepped forward, preparing himself. A shadow appeared first. Then the man from earlier stepped into the corridor with a calmness that made the moment even more unsettling. He smiled faintly, as if he had been expecting them to run this way. He whispered that they should stop, that running would only make things worse. Alina's breath caught, and she pressed Maya against her chest protectively. Keanu stepped forward, blocking the man's view of Alina and Maya. The man raised his eyebrows, amused at the resistance. He told Keanu he admired his loyalty but questioned whether he understood the full picture. He said Alina had taken something important, something that belonged to people who did not forgive or forget. He said Keanu was putting himself in danger for someone who might not be telling him the entire truth. Keanu remained silent. His calmness seemed to unsettle the man slightly. He took another step forward, telling Keanu to move aside, but Keanu did not move. Instead, he shifted his body slightly to signal Alina to step back quietly. She did, her breath trembling. Maya clung to her weakly. The man sighed, shaking his head. He reached into his jacket slowly, and Keanu prepared to defend them. But before anything could happen, another voice echoed down the hallway. A voice none of them expected. A voice that made the man freeze and turn sharply. And when Keanu and Alina looked in that direction, their eyes widened in shock. Because standing at the end of the hallway was someone Alina never thought she would see again. The hallway felt charged with a tension so heavy that even the emergency lights seemed to dim under its weight. Keanu kept his body positioned protectively between Alina and the man approaching them. But everything shifted the moment a familiar voice echoed from the far end of the corridor. The man in the dark jacket froze mid-step, surprise flickering across his face. Alina's breath stopped in her throat, her whole body trembling as she turned her head slowly toward the source of the voice. Standing at the end of the hallway, illuminated only by a soft red glow from the emergency lamps, was a figure Alina had not seen in months. Her eyes widened, disbelief flooding her expression. She whispered a name under her breath, barely audible but heavy with emotion. Keanu glanced back at her, seeing the shock in her eyes, before turning his attention toward the newcomer. The man who stepped forward looked exhausted, as if life had weighed heavily on him, yet his posture carried purpose and urgency. His clothes were worn, his face unshaven, and his eyes tired, but beneath all that lay a familiar tenderness directed straight toward Alina and Maya. He whispered Alina's name with a voice that cracked. Tears instantly filled her eyes. She felt her legs weaken, her heart stumbling between fear, confusion, and hope. The man whispered again, "It's me, Alina, it's really me." Keanu looked between them, understanding slowly forming in his mind. This was someone important, someone whose sudden return meant something larger was happening. Alina clutched Maya tighter, her breath trembling as she whispered the name again, this time louder, filled with longing and pain. Tamaz, the man at the end of the hall, Tamaz, took a shaky step forward, raising his hands slowly as if approaching a frightened animal. He told Alina he had been searching for her and Maya for months. He said he had gone back to the storage facility after she disappeared and discovered everything she had been trying to avoid. He found out who was after her, and he realized she had been right all along. He said he had been trying to warn her, but by the time he tracked her down, she was already gone. The man in the dark jacket shifted uncomfortably, recognizing Tamaz immediately. His eyes narrowed with irritation. He muttered that Tamaz was supposed to stay out of this, that he had been warned to disappear. Tamaz took another step forward, glaring at the man. His calmness cracked as he said he would not let them hurt Alina or Maya. He said he had evidence now, evidence that could end everything the dangerous group had been hiding. Keanu's attention sharpened instantly. He asked Tamaz what kind of evidence he had. Tamaz explained that the page Alina had accidentally taken was part of a larger scheme involving illegal deals, stolen goods, and false records hidden inside the warehouse. He had found more documents and had already given copies to trusted people who were prepared to expose everything if anything happened to Alina or Maya. The man in the jacket grew visibly angry, realizing the situation had shifted out of his control. Alina's knees weakened with relief and shock mixing violently inside her. She whispered that she thought Tamaz had abandoned them, but he shook his head frantically, saying he would never abandon them. He explained that he had been forced into hiding because the same people chasing Alina had come after him. He had spent months trying to stay alive while also searching for her. His eyes filled with tears as he said he never stopped looking, never stopped hoping to find them. The man in the jacket snapped, stepping forward with sudden aggression. He told Tamaz he had made everything worse. He said they were all in danger now. Keanu stepped forward even more, shielding Alina and Maya completely. He told the man firmly that the situation was over, that they would no longer run or hide. He said authorities could be contacted, and the clinic staff would soon realize something was wrong. The man shook his head angrily, saying it was too late for peaceful solutions. Before he could move again, a loud voice echoed down the hallway. "Drop your hands and stay where you are." Everyone turned sharply. Two security officers from the clinic stepped into the hallway with flashlights and protective gear. The unconscious guard in the security room had regained consciousness and called for help. The backup team arrived quickly, alerted by the building's alarm system being tampered with. The officers approached cautiously, recognizing the threat immediately. The man in the jacket froze, realizing his plan had collapsed. He looked between the officers, Tamaz, Keanu, and the exit. For a brief moment, it seemed he might try to run. But before he could take a step, one of the officers moved forward swiftly and restrained him. His two accomplices from outside were caught moments later trying to enter the building. Everything unfolded rapidly, the tension slowly unwinding from the air like a tight rope finally loosening. Alina collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed with relief. Tamaz rushed toward her and they embraced tightly, holding each other as if afraid the moment would slip away. Maya reached out weakly, whispering "Papa" with a soft, tired voice. Tamaz lifted her gently, tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter close for the first time in months. Keanu watched the family reunite with a quiet sense of relief. The storm that had followed them for months was finally beginning to break. Alina looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude deeper than words could ever express. She held Maya with one arm and reached out with the other, touching Keanu's hand softly. She whispered thank you in a trembling voice, saying he had saved them in more ways than one. But Keanu shook his head gently. He told her that she had saved herself by fighting every day to protect her daughter, and that Tamaz had saved them by refusing to give up. He said he had only done what any human should do, stand by those who needed help. The authorities arrived shortly after, guided by the evidence Tamaz had gathered. The dangerous group was exposed, and investigations began immediately. Elena and Tamaz explained everything, and with Keanu's support, the truth was finally brought into the light. For the first time in a long time, Elena felt safe. Maya remained in the clinic for a few more days, receiving proper care, food, rest, and treatment. Her strength slowly returned, her cheeks gaining color again. Each day, Elena and Tamaz sat beside her bed, holding her hands, whispering stories of hope. Keanu visited often, bringing books, warm meals, and gentle encouragement. On the final night Maya stayed in the clinic, she asked Keanu a question with her small, steady voice. She asked why he helped them, why he stayed even when things were scary. Keanu smiled softly and told her that helping someone was never scary when it came from the heart. He said kindness was not bravery, it was simply choosing humanity. Maya smiled weakly and placed her small hand on his cheek. She whispered that he was her hero. Keanu felt his heart warm deeply, humbled by her innocent words. When the day finally came for Elena, Tamaz, and Maya to leave the clinic, the sky outside was a soft golden color, like the world itself was welcoming a new beginning. Elena turned to Keanu, tears shining in her eyes, and said she would never forget what he had done. Tamaz shook his hand firmly, promising that their family would rebuild their life, this time without fear. Keanu watched them walk away slowly, their footsteps steady, their future finally clear of shadows. The weight that had pressed on the night of the premiere had lifted. He stood there for a long moment, breathing deeply, letting the warmth of hope settle into his chest. The world outside saw only a premiere interrupted. But Keanu knew the truth. That night he had not stepped away from the red carpet. He had stepped into someone's life at the exact moment they needed him most. And sometimes, that was where real stories began.